These days, cheap clothing is very easy to come by. With some stores, it feels like you can buy a whole new wardrobe for under $50. Most people don't even think twice about it. And with online shopping, finding cheap clothes has been made easier than ever. The tag may say $7 for a t-shirt, but the buyer will never know the true cost of fast fashion. With the increasing popularity of online shopping in today's society, certain clothing brands are beginning to take advantage of it by mass-producing cheap, low-quality, and unsustainable clothing. This is called fast fashion, and these brands are everywhere, drawing people in with the promise of trendy clothing for a low price. You've most likely heard of brands such as Shein or Romwe, which have been growing in popularity lately. And you'd be surprised not only by how many people shop at their sites, but by all the damaging and unethical issues behind the scenes. The greatest controversies involve the mistreatment of workers and the negative impact it has on the environment.
Floors are above floors of women crammed in spaces. Every window had bars, so there was no fire exit, nothing. And you start talking to the women, and they're all scared to talk to you. And some, they had the courage to talk. They said that they were working, producing 150 pieces an hour. They had like 2 toilet breaks a day. If their child was ill and they couldn't come to work, they lost the job.
People should be made more aware of all these issues involving fast fashion and should learn to search for a sustainable fashion alternative if they can afford it.
What do you know about fast fashion?
Well, that it's like you create a bunch of clothing, or these companies far away mass produce a bunch of clothing, and they use like child labor and stuff, and they overwork their employees, and they just like to mass produce clothing. Every year, 150 billion items of clothing are produced, and 2.5 billion pounds of fabric are wasted in landfills.
Fast fashion knockoffs are harming not only independent designers, but drastically contributing to the climate crisis.
80 billion items are manufactured every year.
We're putting too much product out there, most of that product ending up in landfill.
So-called fast fashion allows consumers to buy more, but they're wearing these garments less often and disposing of them at an unprecedented rate.
Fast fashion refers to clothing that riffs on fashion trends with cheap garments created at breakneck speed to meet consumer demand. According to a 2018 study by McKinsey & Company, the fashion industry is on track to increase its carbon emissions 60% by 2030.
It's like bad for the environment, it's bad for the workers.
What specifically about that brand drew you in?
Like, people just told me that it was like a place where you could buy clothes, and it had cheap clothes. It had like a lot of clothes. Like you could find anything. Like you could find, simpler outfits to more niche fashion styles, and that was like cool because sometimes it's hard to find stuff. So I was like, oh, this looks interesting. I'm not like 100% sure what is. I know that you said like Shein is, so I bought from there once. You remember that?
Were you ever disappointed with the quality of the clothes?
Yeah, yes. Sometimes, I bought like this shirt once for this place, and it was a completely different texture. There was this one thing I bought that didn't arrive, and it still hasn't, so I think I got scammed. And a lot of times they're not like very well made, which I kind of expected, but it's like. Along with the rising popularity of online shopping, in-person stores have had a long history of unsustainability and unethical methods of producing clothes.
Well, as I was telling you the story, we were in Macy's quite a few years ago, 20 years or so, and we were buying summer clothes in the winter for a trip to Bermuda. And we tried, whenever possible, to buy American. A fellow behind us just chimed in that, that's not good. He said, my company actually produces goods made in Korea. And they really work hard there, and they really try to give you good quality. And then he goes on to say how they work 3 shifts. And on the late shift, they play music, LPs, So it has to be more than 20 years ago, at a very, very high rate of speed to keep the workers awake. So I told them, you just defeated your own argument. It's actually abuse of workers. But by doing that, they're able to produce cheaper goods. And then, of course, Korea unionized, and they took their shops and sent them to China for profit.
Did you know that there are in-person fast fashion stores too?
Kind of, but I'm a bit confused about. I mean, I guess I understand how that works. It just doesn't seem like you don't realize that it's fast fashion because it's like right in front of you, and so it's like, oh no, this is just like a small little brand.
Do you think that there are justifiable reasons to buy from fast fashion?
Like I said earlier, I mean, there are like for people that don't have a lot of money. Sometimes it's hard to find clothes for cheap, but it's never gonna be like, it's never great, obviously. I mean, I don't think that someone's automatically a disgusting person for doing that one thing, because it's a lot of time you don't realize like how bad it is, but it's not like a thing that's like good. I mean, there's like, I don't know, yeah.
The fast fashion industry has gone as an undetected problem for years, but there are many ways that we can avoid it. Some of the most sustainable brands to shop at are Levi's, Adidas, and Patagonia. But it's a good idea to research brands before shopping and avoid brands notorious for unsustainable practices. Thrift shopping or online shopping from secondhand clothes shops such as ThredUp or Depop are also good alternatives. And so is donating old clothes instead of throwing them away. You can even learn to make your own clothing.
Yeah, so over the pandemic, I learned how to sew, or kind of relearned how to sew, and been making a lot of masks, of course. That's where I started, but also have been working on making my own sustainable clothing, and it's kind of been a gift.
Just try your best to stop buying from brands like that and try to find cheap alternatives that are bad for the environment and for people's health.
It's the way of the world, and it's too bad, but you can still buy things in America, but at what cost? And that's the eternal question. We're in a way we're supporting I don't want to say slave labor, but cheap labor and abuse of workers.